So we're going to play a game and it's called Carnivore Food Roulette. Basically, I have 10 foods here. They are carnivore, but some are going to be better than others. So, for people that want to heal, they want the best results from carnivore, we're going to get Dr. Chaffee's opinion on these foods so that you can think, okay, best, good, not so good, and make your own decision. So, are you ready for the first one?
Sounds good. Chicken breast. Oh, it's okay. It's not great. It's very lean. I've had the skin on it, a little better, but it's mostly protein. There's really not much fat, which is why it doesn't taste that interesting, which is why most people don't like the chicken breast because fat is flavor. And so you're only getting the protein. That's interesting for a short period of time. And then your brain's like, nope, we want fat. So we want other nutrients as well. Also, something I learned recently was that the chicken manufacturers and the tasters and things like that, they actually go for bland on chicken. They don't want like actual like chickeny flavor. Chicken flavor used to be a major flavoring and chips and crackers and all these sorts of things. Now chicken doesn't taste like anything. Now you have all the different teriyaki chicken, peanut chicken, all these sorts of different things that you add flavors to. So it's like a sort of a vehicle like tofu, where you add something to it and the chicken takes on that flavor. If you are feeding a chicken what it's normally supposed to eat and it's a little older, it has a much stronger taste. And for some reason, the idiots in charge decided that bland is better. So they wanted basically tasteless, useless chicken. And if it's tasteless, it doesn't have all that flavor. I mean, that's nutrients that you're tasting. And so those good tastes, like, hey, that tastes good. Your brain's saying, hey, there's nutrients in there that we want. Obviously, sugar is an outlier. That's just a drug. So of course you're going to say, oh, I want more of that. You're going to say you want more of cocaine as well. So that's not the same thing. But your brain also looks for nutrients, right? And so you get that positive feedback when you're getting these nutrients, and it's just this bland sort of nothing flavor, which is what chicken breast is. It's just telling you that it's not too nutritious. It doesn't have everything that you may want.
And I'm sure that if it's not chicken breast, is drumsticks and thigh a better option, or the whole chicken with the
Hmm.
skin?
Well, yeah, certainly everything with the skin. But the chicken breast and the thigh and the drumstick, absolutely, yeah. The dark meat's much better, has a better fat content, better nutrient content, and certainly with the skin on as well. That's why the skin's the most tasty part of the chicken. It's because it has more nutrients in it. And so yeah, definitely. If when I talk to people, for their own preferences or affordability, they sometimes want to do chicken. I just say fine, just do chicken drumsticks or thighs with the skin on, and avoid the skinless options and the breasts. Yeah.
Perfect. Now, this one has a lot of nutrients. Keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, oh, that's perfect. Yeah. So ribeye in the States is about that 1 to 1 grams of fat and protein. So it's about 70% calories from fat. In other countries, like in Australia, it's not really a ribeye. It's called a Scotch fillet, where they actually trim off all the fat around the outside, and it's much leaner. And they actually breed the cows here to be much leaner as well, because that's just the market here, unfortunately. But generally, that's a very good mix. That's red meat in general seems to be much more nutritious. The ruminant animals are better able to break down and detoxify different plant chemicals, even the ones that they don't typically eat or weren't designed to eat, like cows and grasses. So they're being fed corn and grain and things like that. That's going to be things that they're not really used to eating, but they're better able at detoxifying and breaking that stuff down. So whereas like a pig or a chicken, they're monogastrics, they're not as able to do that. It seems that they don't detoxify and eliminate these poisons and toxins as much as other animals do, and so that sort of gets through into the meat. And you'll look at like the fat content, when they're fed all these soy and grain and things like that, the oils from those plants actually end up in the pig and the chicken. So they have high levels of linoleic acid, which is plant oils. Most plant oils are like 80% linoleic acid. That stuff is toxic stuff. There's actually a randomized controlled trial where they used polyunsaturated fats like linoleic acid and replaced saturated fats with them, which is like literally on most medical board examination questions, like, well, how would you do this? How do you lower, what should you do? Oh, you should lower it with polyunsaturated fats. You should replace saturated fats with polyunsaturated fats. There's a randomized control trial that actually showed that, when doing that, with these things, there, a lot of them have a high portion of linoleic acid. It did indeed lower people's LDL cholesterol. And in fact, in that group that started eating more unsaturated fats and lowered their LDL cholesterol, they started having more heart attacks and strokes and dying more. So that's not good. Because the whole point here is to reduce death, reduce disease, not to reduce cholesterol. Like, the point of reducing cholesterol is because we're told that higher cholesterol equals higher heart attacks and strokes. That is not the case. That is flat out lie. And we have plenty of studies showing exactly that.
And that's something we're going to talk about a bit later. But speaking of products from a pig that might be toxic, keen to hear your thought about this one, bacon.
Yeah, so again, if you're eating meat, that's better than any other option, right? So bacon is better than any plant you'll ever have, right? Even if it's not raised in the best ways, but it's still giving you very healthy things, still giving you healthy fats, healthy proteins, healthy nutrients that you need, and it's eliminating out most of the things that you don't want. In those soy and corn fed cows, a lot of these things are coming from China, and they're just dumping in soy, and so they're not as healthy, and so they have a lot of linoleic acid and things like that. And then some bacon, if you're going to have bacon, I think it's better if you can to get the sugar-free bacon, ones that don't use sugar in the cure. Yeah, but even the ones that do use some sugar, it's a very small amount. It's like less than 1 gram per serving. So 1 gram per few pieces of bacon or something like that. And so you can get cleaner ones, or you can get ones that are maple bacon. They add a lot of sugar, so definitely avoid those. So you get ones that aren't as processed, don't have as much sugar added. But either way, that bacon is going to be better than any other plant that you ever choose to eat. So if that's what you have available to you, then go for it. If you can get it from pasture raised pigs that aren't fed corn and soy, even better.
Okay, well, the next carnivore superfood, we're hearing that sardines is a superfood. What's your take if you eat a lot of sardines, or just more sardines in your carnivore diet?
It's probably fine, good omega-3s, things like that. I mean, calling them a superfood, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I think all meat is a superfood. I think all meat is the only superfood. I think the only thing that is a superfood for any species is what that species evolved to eat and what is biologically appropriate for that animal, right? And so grass is a superfood for cows. Gazelle is a superfood for lions, and meat is a superfood for us. So any meat is fine. Sardines are a bit lean. The smaller fishes are a bit lean, but they do have good fat, very good fatty acids like the omega-3s, and those are great for you. So having a bit of sardines every now and then as an addition to your steaks or whatever else you're eating, I think is a great idea.
Okay, well, talking about the seafood category, salmon.
Yes. Yeah,
Good.
salmon's good too. Yeah, and it's good. It's a good fatty fish. So salmon has about 60% calories from fat. And so it's it's up there. So maybe if people need a bit more fat than that, then they just melt some butter on it or something like that, which is just going to make it taste better anyway. But it's good. So some people worry about seafood, especially up the food chain in the seafood, because you're going to get higher concentrations of heavy metals like mercury. That's not something that, and that's certainly something that people should be interested in and at least look into. I don't eat too much seafood myself. It's just every now and then I'll sort of see a piece of salmon or something like that at Costco. I'm like, oh, that looks good. I think I'll grab that. That's about it for me. I haven't really looked. There's a lot of fear mongering with meat in general, and so I have my suspicions when anybody says like, oh, you got to avoid this meat or that meat because of all this toxin and this and that. Maybe there's mercury, but I'm sure there is, but what is that level, and is that as harmful as they're saying it is? I don't know. I mean, it's something that you should think about. I mean, you shouldn't just dismiss it. But the Japanese eat a lot of seafood, and they don't seem to be dropping dead of mercury poisoning or having very severe and serious health ramifications as a result of that. There were issues back in, I think, the 50s and 60s, where they're having some weird illnesses and diseases running through, and they didn't know why people were getting sick and people were dying. After about 10 years of investigating, they finally decided, well, they found some little isolated bacteria or something like that, and they're like, okay, it must be this little pathogen, and we'll try and fix it. And they spent another decade trying to cure this pathogen, and then after 20 years of basically chasing their tails, they figured out, like, oh, actually, this is coming from all the pollution coming out of our factories into the ocean, and that's getting into the food supply, and we're eating a bunch of fish, and people are getting poisoned from that. So that is not a non-issue. It's not something that I think is too much of a concern if you're just having some salmon every now and then. There are a lot of very beneficial things in salmon. If you're eating salmon every single day, yeah, maybe look in to where your salmon is coming from and what the heavy metal content is on that, and then just decide accordingly. But having some salmon every now and then is perfectly fine.
Okay. We know you love your ribeyes. What about ground beef?
Ground beef is great. Ground beef is just as good as ribeye as long as it has enough fat. So it's still from the same animal, right? So it's still beef. It still should be just as nutritious. In fact, sometimes you can get even better ground beef than you can get other sorts of cuts, because people, for some damn silly reason, they think that older cows, they're too tough, so you can't like butcher them and turn them into steaks and sell those, which is completely wrong. That's I've had a 10-year-old cow. It was perfect. It was beautiful. The gristle was like whalebone. Like, I don't know what happened to that stuff, but it was like that was rock hard, like the tendons and things like that. But the meat itself was perfectly soft. The fat was perfectly soft. It was just like the connective tissue, the tendons and things like that. Like that was tougher, but it was easier to pick out. And then you just don't have to like chew on it for an hour. You just pull it out, and then you don't eat that. As a result, they end up just grinding the whole cow down into hamburger, and either just keeping it or putting it or selling it out as hamburger. And so, if you get one of these, like, 10-year-old, 5-year-old, 15-year-old cows that have been ground up in a hamburger, that could be the best damn meat that you've ever eaten. And so, it's luck of the draw. So no, yeah, no, ground beef is great. So just beef in general is fantastic. I would sort of rank that right there up at the top, of nutritious meats, and whether it's ground or in a steak.
I thought that
Yeah.
you would love that. Now, the next one,
Yeah.
Dr. Bright absolutely loves, has a lot of it. And what are your
Mhm.
thoughts on butter?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, butter's good. There's a lot of healthy fats and a lot of healthy nutrients, and fat soluble vitamins, which are great. Some people have a bit of a problem with dairy, and they might have a problem with the milk proteins in the butter. Ghee is a good workaround for that. It also has a higher smoke point if you want to cook with it. But I don't have a problem with butter. I don't react poorly to dairy, and so that's my workaround for the fact that they trim off way too much fat from the steaks here in Australia. If I'm getting ribeye, I'll melt butter onto the top of it. Tastes amazing, and I increase the amount of fat that I have. So yeah, no, that's fine as long as yeah. So butter's great as long as you do well with it. If you react poorly to it, then yeah, find something else like butter or lard or something like that.
Well, the next one is something that I know that you like, but if somebody has a weight loss goal, if somebody
Mhm.
wants to heal inflammation, is raw milk okay?
Well, I guess it depends, as compared to what. Like if they're coming from, eating a ultra processed diet or a vegan diet, or these other sorts of very pro-inflammatory diets that are lacking in nutrition, then raw milk is going to be a big step up, and you're going to improve greatly from that. I don't think it's the best thing that you can do. Weston A. Price actually found that in a lot of these places that were just eating a whole bunch of plants and things like that, they're very nutrient starved, had a lot of growth abnormalities and nutritional deficiencies, and he found that raw milk was one of the quickest ways of getting people healthy again. And it has a lot of really good nutrients in it, but it's not as good as a steak, and it doesn't have all the things that you want exactly. and it can be pro-inflammatory, and especially people with autoimmune issues. Um, you're just going to react more strongly to milk proteins. And then also, if you're drinking enough of it, now kids that are nursing on breast milk, they're in ketosis, and this is when their brains are growing the fastest. Yeah, so even though there's lactose, they're actually still in ketosis. And so as an adult, that doesn't necessarily work like that. And so we can raise our insulin, we can reduce our ketones, and ketones directly reduce inflammation as well, right? And so you really want to avoid carbohydrates or anything that can suppress your ketone production, like lectins. So, people on a ketogenic diet, they can actually eat different lectins that, don't come with carbs, but they actually bind to the insulin receptors more tightly than insulin sometimes. And so you can still get this suppressive effect. And so if you do anything that's going to suppress your ketones, it can also produce inflammation, but it also suppresses these ketones and other things that are going to reduce inflammation as well. And so, that could be a thing. So I'm sure it's going to be a lot better than what you were doing before. But if you're going for optimal, if you're going for the best possible outcome, then probably want to avoid that for most people. Some people will do just fine on it, but I think most people, if you're really trying to maximize that, especially if you have inflammatory problems like autoimmune issues, if you're going to do better without any milk and just red meat and water, really, probably as much grass finished red meat and water as you can get.
Okay. Second last one is fruit. Now, this is not just all fruit. I'm more talking about low sugar fruit like berries and that kind of thing. Is that okay to have from time to time?
If you want, I mean, yeah, you can have some alcohol from time to time if you want to, or some cocaine or whatever. It's totally up to you. It's up to the individual. I don't think it's optimal. I know you don't need it, and so if you want it as a treat, understand it is a treat and it's not the best thing you could do for your body. Depending on the berry, they can, first of all, most berries will kill you. Like if you just like go out in the woods and there's just random berries on a bush, don't eat them. Like most of them will kill you. And that's because they've evolved with birds and the plant wants a bird to eat it, or a specific bird to eat it. So those seeds will germinate in their gut and then be passed around distantly. They don't just want any random animal to eat those berries. They want specific animals to eat those berries. And usually it's birds. So there are some that we can eat. And it's usually the sweeter ones that are less toxic. That's what the thought is on fructose, and why that's the sweetest of the carbohydrates, is because that we've come to recognize that as safe, because we don't really know of any plants that are acutely poisonous that will like kill you that day, that have fructose. And so we've recognized that, or our ancestors who have found that more desirable and say, hey, well, this kind of tastes a bit good. This tastes sort of good. Those are the ones that were able to sort of recognize safer foods and survive a famine better, right? And so those are the ones that survived. There's a survival advantage. But long term, fructose is really bad for you. And so, I don't think that's really what you want to do. But in general, things with fructose tend to be less toxic. Now, that comes with a few caveats. They aren't completely devoid of toxins. Like blueberries will have a lot of tannins and oxalates, right? All citrus have different furanocoumarins, which are UV sensitive and will bind to proteins and DNA and damage them permanently in the presence of UV light. So if it gets on your skin, you can get chemical burns. And this is well known, established, and documented in dermatology. And it's in textbooks and all the rest. And it happens to real people and adults and children. And then if you're eating this stuff too, those furanocoumarins are toxic chemicals. Your body has to detoxify them. They're causing problems. You can get light sensitivity, as well from ingesting them. So they're not completely devoid of harm. They're not completely benign just because they have a bit of sugar in them. And then, sugar long-term, fructose long-term is a drug, and it's harmful, and it damages your body in the same way as alcohol does, because fructose is broken down into the same byproducts as alcohol in your liver. So you get the same problems like fatty liver disease, cirrhosis, diabetes, heart disease, even implicated in cancer and Alzheimer's, right? So that's not what you want. I just don't think there's any need anyway. I'm not eating for entertainment. I'm not eating to, interest myself. I have enough stuff going on in my life that I'm not just needing entertainment for my food. I'm not that bored. And so, I can go and do some other things. But, if people want some berries every now and then, that's your business. The other caveat is that these things absolutely still have toxins in them. And the reason they have toxins in them is because it's protecting the seed. So it only wants certain things to eat that plant or eat that fruit. But also, when they're not ripe, the seed's not ready, and it absolutely does not want anything to eat that. It wants it to be ripe, and that's when it's easy, it's softer, it falls off the stem really easily, right? So it's all there, geared up, ready to go. Plants say, yep, 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 you can take it now. Before then, when it's hard and it's more tart and it doesn't have all the sweetness or whatever, it's going to be a lot more toxic. And this is why people thought for centuries that green tomatoes were poisonous. You can't eat green tomatoes; they're poisonous, right? And then, in my lifetime, I remember, oh well, that's just an old wives' tale, all that sort of stuff. That's not an old wives' tale. It has a lot more solanine, it has a lot more defense chemicals in it when it's green, because it doesn't want anything messing with its seeds before they're ready to go. When they vine ripen, I mean, they even smell different. Like if you get tomatoes at the store, there's just not much smell. It's not very interesting on a box ripened one. You get the fresh vine ripened, like something fresh and like nice. Like, oh, actually, that's a nice smell. And then normally, traditionally, people would put them in boiling water, take the skin off, and then take the seeds out and only use the pulp. And that's, so again, taking out the more toxic parts of that fruit. More toxic. It doesn't get rid of all of them. And there are studies that show that if you pick tomatoes green, that they don't actually get rid of the toxins. So we're picking all this fruit when it's green, when it's super toxic, right? Or at least more toxic. And then it does not necessarily get rid of all those toxins when they get to you. So if you have a blueberry bush and you're picking these things dead ripe, that's going to be a lot better. Or if you have an avocado tree and you're picking that avocado as it's just falling off in your hands, that's going to be a lot better. Doesn't mean that it doesn't have oxalates, that it doesn't have tannins, that it doesn't have all these other things. But avocados, when they're green, have 4 times the amount of oxalates in them than when they're ripe, right? So it does make a difference on that as well. And if you're buying it from the store, you can guarantee that unless it says vine ripened, tree ripened, whatever, it is not. It is definitely not.
Good thing I don't buy tomatoes or any other vegetable, because can't trust it. Exactly, right? Scary.
And it's so much easier when you just don't buy the crap in the first place. Just like that's someone else's problem, which is great.
The next one, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Now, fatty latte is coffee with butter in it. We know your thoughts about coffee. So what do you think about fatty latte?
Well, I mean, the butter is fine. I wouldn't drink the latte part of it. So, there are some people that do that as have a workaround on that, which is called bulletproof water, sort of warm water, hot water, put a stick of butter into it and just blended that up like you would like bulletproof coffee, right? And then just whips it up. It's all creamy and foamy. It's actually like frothy. It's really nice, actually. And you can sort of drink that. So it's like this hot buttery drink, and you don't have to have the coffee with it as well. So if I were to do something like that, it would be that. I don't know. I just eat meat.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to get the next episode in 2 days.